I've had a very specific idea in mind for how I wanted to finish off this Basemap project. Thankfully, there have been a ton of incredible blog posts on what you can do in the new ArcGIS Online Map Viewer. I was hoping these new layer effects were going to solve all of my problems. Turns out, I was wrong. I wanted to take my map from this to this. A nice irregular vignette around my area of interest, just fading to the background terrain. So what went wrong? Well, there's two things really. First, I'm not quite happy with how the area of interest vignette is behaving. You can see as I zoom in and out, it shrinks and expands. And then as you pan around, it also has some rather interesting behaviors. It's doing some interesting things. And it turns out that this is a feature of the bloom effect. And there's actually this option to adjust based on the scale, and it's still not enough to counteract this behavior. So like most things, once you see it, you can't really unsee it. It's just distracting, or to use a more technical term, janky. Now it's distracting because of the movement, which our eyes are really good at picking up on, but distracting isn't a word that I want associated with this web map. Again, the whole intent behind using these vignettes is to focus your attention on a specific part of the map. This is why consistency across your levels of detail, your zoom scales, are so important. And that's why it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I want this feathered edge of my vignette locked to the pieces of geography that I tie it to. And I want it to remain that way as I zoom in and out. So that is challenge number one. Now, don't get me wrong, these new map viewer effects are really slick, and it's really quite impressive what you can make with them. It's just that I need this Basemap to work not only in the web, but also in ArcGIS Pro. Unfortunately, Pro doesn't yet support all these really cool web effects. As a matter of fact, you don't even have access to all the different blend modes that you've got in the new map viewer. Things like the compositing blend modes, or the Porter-Duff blend modes, or even the invert blend modes. So if your web map uses any of these features, it's not going to render properly in ArcGIS Pro. And for me, that's the real showstopper. That lack of support of these features in Pro. That's challenge number two. So what do we do now? Well, thankfully, I've got a solution to get us the aesthetic that we so desperately desire. Let's take a look at that now. So the first thing that we need to do is create our area of interest vignette. And once again, we're going to start in our layout view, just like we've done with previous ones. We need to make sure that our data set is properly centered and is completely contained in that extent. So let's just go to, let's try 19,000. And we'll center that. Close out. So that looks good. Now for this, we're just going to use the lasso, and we're just going to click and drag and rough in our extent. Get these interesting geographic features in there. Come up through here. Just go around this spur. Back around. Now be careful towards the edge of your data set. You don't want to have your vignette overrun the edge. So we want to come right up to it just like that. Now it doesn't look like much right now, but what we'll do next is go into the symbol and start editing this. For this, we're actually going to be applying a gradient stroke. So we'll turn our stroke into a gradient, and we'll select this handy dandy pre-built gradient. Set our width to 100 points. We'll leave our offset at 0 in our pattern. We're going to go with continuous, relative, and 75%. If we hit apply, there's that. That's looking pretty good. Need to make a couple additional changes. So let's go to our solid fill. We want to fill this in. So we'll just make that black. Now you see we lost a lot of our feathered edge there. So we're going to go into our layer effects. We're going to add offset to our fill. And for that, we're going to set our offset to -40. See how that looks. We get a little bit more of our feathered edge back. That's cool. I still want to soften this up more. And again, the other real cool effect of being able to do this in the layout view, you can zoom in and your gradients don't change their distance. You know what we're going to do? We're going to make a couple of copies of this. So we'll just do, let's do 3. See how that looks. And then for each of these, we're going to change the offset just a little bit. So we'll change this one to, let's change this one to 4. Apply. So we get just a little bit more. Now, I mentioned before that we want to make sure that we're not coming anywhere near the edge. And we do actually overrun just a little bit over here. So cool thing about shapes inside layout is that you can make adjustments to those as necessary. If you want to select a whole bunch of them, you can just do that too. Grab those, just snug that up just a little bit, just to make sure we clear this edge. If your vignette overruns the edge of your data set, you'll add some anomalies along this edge here. All right, that's looking pretty good. I think I like that. Next, we need to turn this off, and now we're ready to export our vignette. So we've got this all set. We're going to export a TIFF, 300 DPI, and let's back this down to 24-bit true color, and we're ready to go. And while that's doing that, let's get things ready over here. Let's start working on our map. So we'll add our vignette to our current map. It should look familiar, right? Similar to what we did before. And we'll do our typical screen blend mode on that. There we go. We got that nice feathered edge. It's holding up at all scales as we zoom in. It's not moving around on us. Perfect. And we're not seeing any of the edges of our data set. Right? So our vignette is actually completely covering our data set. Perfect. I'm just going to select both of these, and I'm going to hit Control G to group that, and F2 to rename it. So I've got a blend mode set on this, but did you know that you can apply a blend mode to a group layer? I've been using this technique for a while, and it's been getting some attention out on Twitter, actually. Spiros over at CartoRedux Geography has been experimenting with this as well. And it inspired me to dig into this a little bit more. Now, he's got a great blog with a bunch of detailed how-tos, so be sure to go check that out. I'll have a link to his blog in the description below. Back to the map. With our group layer, we can actually apply a blend mode. Now, it doesn't look like much here, but when we turn on our background terrain, watch what happens. All that white surrounding stuff that we had from our vignette is now gone, and we've got this really cool feathered edge that stays put as you zoom in and out. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. Now, when would I use this kind of technique, this group layer with a blend mode? If I wanted to fuse my raster data set, this area of interest, if I wanted to fuse that with this background terrain that I had, if I wanted to create a single base map out of that, this technique would be really, really effective. But in this case, I've got different plans for my for this base map, and I want it to be a little bit more flexible so I can pair it with other base maps. So I don't want to fuse this data set or this specific area of interest with a terrain background. So I'm going to turn that off, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my background color. I'm going to set that to white. Hopefully it brings that back. That's perfect. And you know what? We can turn off this blend, this darken blend mode, right? We don't need that. Okay, that's all we need to do. This map is now ready for caching. We do need one more bit of information, and that is the extent. That looks good. We're going to use that. So let's head on over to our trusty caching tools. We've got the manage tile cache over here, just like we were using before. The only thing I need to do here is point out, we're going to be using the JPEG 75 tiling scheme, just like we've been doing in the past. I do know that we're going to generate this cache down to 1 to 4,000, so I'll just multi-select these and then hit spacebar to turn that off. I've got my area of interest cache extent selected, and everything looks like it's ready to go. My parallel processing factor is set to 75% because, again, I've got some other stuff running on my machine that I don't want to impact. So we'll kick this off. So this should wrap up here in a few seconds. We'll just let that close out, and that's now finished. Cool. Now let's give that a quick look over just to make sure that everything is as we expect. So we'll browse to our cache dataset directory. We'll add that to our map. And once again, with JPEG 75, instead of that background being transparent like you would get with, say, like a mixed mode, well, now all those pixels are there. But remember, we can apply that darken blend mode, turn all those white pixels transparent. So as we zoom in, once again, our feathered edge remains constant and fixed. The only thing that's left to do now is to export this and get this ready for publishing to ArcGIS Online. So we'll head back over to our geoprocessing tools, export tile cache. Pro tip, don't use the dropdown. Always browse to your cache data set. So we'll find our cache directory, find that raster data set. This is actually a cache data set on disk, but it shows up as just a traditional raster data set. So we'll select that. We're going to choose export as TPKX, and our environment variables we're going to set to 75%. We're going to leave area of interest blank, and we're going to have all the scales selected. Now again, why area of interest blank? Well, because it's done, right? If we just want to copy all of the cache, leave it blank. It's really fast. You could see how fast it did that, a couple seconds. If you want to specify a subset, so if you want to take just a small portion of your cache and create a tile package from that, that's where the area of interest comes into play. Now that we've got our tile package, the next step is to use share package to upload that to ArcGIS Online. So we'll browse to where our tile packages are, select that. I'm not going to hit run on this. I've already uploaded this previously, so let's go check it out in my ArcGIS Online organization. So once the share package geoprocessing tool completes, you'll have 2 new items in your content up in ArcGIS Online or in ArcGIS Enterprise. So we've got our tile package and our published tile layer. So let's just confirm that we've got everything deployed properly. So we'll go to settings, scroll down, we'll go to show current tile details, and everything's been deployed. Now, the other thing we'll need to do is we need to share this, make this accessible to everybody. So we'll click that. Let's tweak our web map. And let's get my big old noggin out of the way. Hold on a sec. There we go. Let's find our layer. Should be right at the top. Add that. Looks a little weird with those white pixels, but don't worry, we can fix that. Go back. Here's our vignette. Once again, we're going to change that to our darken blend mode. Don't worry, we didn't break it. Just got to turn that one off. Matter of fact, no, we can remove that one. We don't need that one anymore. Here is the finished web map. Just a couple clicks, got our layer in there, apply a blend mode, boom, done. It's fixed. It's not moving around. It looks exactly as we want it to. That's just cool. Yep, I like that. That looks really cool. Now there's one last thing we need to do. Again, I wanted to make sure that not only does this work in the web, instead of the new map viewer, but I also want to make sure that I can share this with ArcGIS Pro. And yes, all these individual layers that I've got configured here in my Basemap group could be reused inside Pro, but what's the fun in that? It's a lot of clicking. Instead, what I can do is let me just save this, but then I'm also going to share this map with a very special group inside my organization that is going to drive my Basemap gallery inside ArcGIS Pro. So we'll click OK, we'll click Save. Now let's head back over to ArcGIS Pro, where we'll check out the Basemap. So over here in ArcGIS Pro, let's change this Basemap, and you know what? We'll scroll down. There it is. Look at that. It's exactly what we want. That's really cool. I can zoom in and out. Once again, behaves just like up in the web. That, folks, is it. A shaded relief base map, complete with some delicious vignettes. Works in Pro, works over the web, without any janky bloom effect. Although I'm kind of sad about that. I do love me some bloom, but I feel like I can finally call this base map done. With that, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Take care. See you soon.